All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center, and welcome to the 2022 Southern California Poetry Festival. My name is Quentin Ring, and I am Beyond Baroque's executive director. I have to say we've been having an absolute blast over the past 2 days with this festival, and we're honored to have with us tonight Kazim Ali, Jos Charles, and Mai Der Vang. This is going to be a very special reading. Before we get started, I did want to begin by acknowledging Beyond Baroque's presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. We acknowledge the wrong done to these peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and the violent dispossession of their land. As an arts organization, we are committed to uplifting indigenous writers and communities and honoring their stories and their art. Just to say a little bit about Beyond Baroque, as many of you know, we are a space and a community dedicated to the artistic possibilities of language and to presenting contemporary literature art and to building a diverse literary community. All of that work encompasses readings, workshops, panels, sometimes film performances. We have an art gallery, which I hope you'll check out upstairs. We have a bookstore, of course, which you've seen. We have an archive as well that documents both Beyond Baroque's own history and the history of small press activity in Los Angeles. We're gonna keep on tomorrow with the festival. We're gonna have more readings, including some literary showcases featuring local presses and literary organizations that include the Offing, the LA Review of Books, and What Books Press. We have a reading of indigenous poets, co-sponsored by Tia Chuchas. That reading includes Tommy Pico, Kinsale Drake, and a few others. We have reading and discussion celebrating the Best American Poetry 2022 with guest editor Matthew Zapruder will be here for that reading, as well as contributors to Best American Poetry. And we're going to close with a reading featuring the Poet Laureate of Los Angeles and the Poet Laureate of San Francisco. It's Lynn Thompson, Tongo Eisen Martin. They'll be joined by Connie Williams, Bridget Bianca, and Shonda Buchanan. We're really excited about that. And looking ahead to January, we've got some great programs coming up as well. We're going to be celebrating our poet in residence, Will Alexander, recent Pulitzer Prize finalist. He has a new book out. He's going to be in conversation with Kamau Daoud. We'll be launching a new hybrid interdisciplinary series in collaboration with the poet Daniel Tiffany that brings together poetry, sound arts, experimental film, performance. So stick around for tomorrow and also stick around for next year. We've got a lot of exciting stuff. We're happy to be open again. That's like the main thing. So a few words of thanks. First, a huge thank you to Beyond Baroque's incredibly hardworking staff. Jimmy Vega, Yvonne Salinas, Jessica Wong, Dan McNay, Eric Alberg, Eliza Gislason, and all of our volunteers. This festival wouldn't be possible also without our partnership with the Poetry Foundation. Truly, we're very grateful to them for supporting this festival. We last held it in 2018. We hope to have it again next year. No more of these 4-year breaks. And a big thank you to all of Beyond Baroque's members and supporters for supporting us over the past few years while we've been closed, helping us to reopen and helping to make this festival possible as well. I do have to ask, if you're not a member of Beyond Baroque, we really encourage you to become a member. It's a huge help to us financially. $50 individual membership, $75 dual membership. You can become a member in the bookstore. You can sign up online. It really does help us support the work we do with poets and poetry. But above all, if you do want to spend some money, please buy some books because you'll support our poets. You'll get something great out of it. You'll get a great book. And you'll support also the small presses that this festival is dedicated to sort of bringing together and highlighting. So I won't say too much more about Beyond Baroque, money, etc. But just to say that we wanted to close out the second day of the festival with 3 of the California poets we admire most. 3 poets we find thinking very, very deeply about language. So I'm beyond excited to be hosting Kazim, Jos, and Mai Der. I won't say too much more about the reading. I think their work will speak for itself, but we're just going to bring them up each individually. And so I'll just start off by introducing our first reader, Kazim Ali. Kazim was born in the United Kingdom and has lived transnationally in the United States, Canada, India, France, and the Middle East. His books encompass multiple genres, including several volumes of poetry, novels, and translation. He's currently a professor of literature at the University of California, San Diego. His newest books are a volume of 3 long poems entitled The Voices of Sheila Chandra, and a memoir of his Canadian childhood, Northern Light, Power Land, and the Memory of Water. One of the things I love about Southern California is like the people who come here who, weren't here originally, and I was just like so excited when I realized Kazim was actually living just down in San Diego that we could invite him up here once we were open. So please welcome Kazim Ali.
Hello. Hi. Sheila Chandra is still alive, a British singer, a British Indian singer, and she sang pop music in the beginning, and then she started to get a little more experimental in her sound. And you may know her because her voice is all over the Lord of the Rings film soundtrack. This like elfin music kind of situation. But in 2008, she developed a neurological condition known as burning mouth syndrome, which has no accessible cause and no cure. So she can't sing anymore, and she can barely speak, but she does speak a little bit. And so this book thought about what happens, when we lose the thing that's closest to us, really. And so it came to be about war and sexuality and all other kinds of things too. At any rate, the form of it are sonnets, the individual pieces, but maybe sonnets more in like the Ted Berrigan spirit than in any other kind of spirit. And it also imitates a certain kind of Urdu prosody. So if you've listened to Urdu poetry, you might recognize the rhythms here. And also in certain places, the actual technique in Indian classical music called the konakal, which is when the singer actually vocalizes the drum beat that she wants. And sometimes in a concert, if you go and listen to the singers, they will have a dialogue with the drummer. They'll go back and forth a little while. In any Indian concert, the musicians will talk to each other, sometimes with their instruments. At any rate, the voice of Sheila Chandra. Dude, they're having a party over there. Hold on, I'm sorry. The voice is a sensitive instrument. Breaks is constant, was like the river, light on the river, riven that remained a rift, an old rill that sounded she, merged with the vibration of the drum, maham, mahom, womb, and she, om, moaned in the loam, dark earth, come, Sheila, dame, ocean, dome, this poem, Rome to tome, tomb, foam, original fountain that fed my mom, Zamzam, when I was born. Who can, in syllables like Sheila, Chandra, moan, us, covered in a blanket of sound, this like cloud bank of stars keeping us from eternity, which under the blanket seen, like Sanjay, a dancer from Philadelphia, who I somehow look like, was mistaken for once 3 times in one day. That was 20 years ago, but the sound story still resounds. Some woman saw him at a festival, saw him perform, swore I was he. I said I wasn't. She did not believe me. Brass, bowl, soul, swindle through years, no identity theft. I want to move like that off the axis of the spine into where and where. Some world where Sanjay said, no, I am not him. And what does all this have to do with the voice of Sheila Chandra? She, having lost, having now, no longer sound, now a constant striking into chaos. That note, that flickers through in abstraction. One is one or zero, and confused, the ear does not focus, neither opens nor closes, always hears. Long before she lost it, drifts unanchored, wanted to merge, and the body of the singer become the body of the instrument. Talk to the drum, find it, hum, study its vowels. She made her vow to sound slowly, syllable by syllable. She pronounced words in Uzbek, words unmoored for meaning, word of that language, unqualified, forbidden by the state, and she, in a stadium full of people for a music festival, spoke that pure sound. O river, long had I been, long seasons invaded by your current, devoured your tongue of water those years. Time bent, my one voice spoke. Carried cacophony, world wheel into the human, one small voice, box, pool, swum. Midnight we went into the sea, expecting our prayers might carry themselves across the silver-slammed surface. Would be answered, or do they answer? Pale cut of prayers do not answer, like back into the dark water. What are those stripes of light across the room, a shape that evaporates upon waking? What language cannot hold on to, what you cannot hold on to? Closer and closer, the wire against my shins warns me from falling blue into the painting is always a web, each cell holding a prisoner of thought. Wire is God. Where is what goes through that cute bearded guy's mind? With the tape measure and the keys on his belt, I've been following him. Holds the bathroom door open just 1 second too long, and I nearly follow him inside, but body language is hard to read, so I stayed with the painting, and he did come back, and now he too is staring into the islands and writing Agnes Motherfucker Martin in his notebook. Smoke. A voice hits all the notes at once. Devotional or pop song or drone, same difference. Talk now, body as stone. I am walking backwards from death through porn and prayer. And why shouldn't I fuck a stranger in the Guggenheim bathroom while someone bangs on the door? Return to unknowing where Sheila found me, where who found me? Dog star, my friend, neither day nor night nor behind the wire, but tell in the fragile body what's next. How did I get caught not listening to what happened in the future when the fortune teller told? It sucks. That's an aside. That wasn't in the poem. It sucks to not know. Now, do I always turn to the tenor stricken? I have no fear of God, but of being this archangel unfolding to emerge from God into form. How untoward, after all, above and below the line of having lived, I abstain, bound to the horizon, not earth, not sky, not Sheila, sings the voice, breaks body, breaks stations of the cross, or those Jewish texts that blank out one vowel. Unspeakable Zen mind is not empty mind, but mind river that knows it flows. Let me get there, past years, or drink, or sex. When I saw the dog, after a decade, he only wanted to look at me, lick me, smell me. It's easy to be loved by a dog, both actual and metaphorical. How to transcribe what flickers, what is not fixed, that voice, letters made not of ink but light, not words of fire on stone. How do you transcribe the blank vowel, all the after that aerates, not disappear, but settle down through air? You do not want to say, but sing, where might be rain, be sky, come down by snow, but no, you invite it to cover you. The blanket, your coat, a heavy pressure, God, pressure of rain. You want to start the song over, but do not dare to be ready. No tune, no cadence, nothing to pick up, no bridge to cross now, to be small again, break through. There is no beginning to any song, only the place the singer picks up the tune. What represses, unhomes in the sound? Who has made me? What is made me? Is a voice just muscles and shape and breath to phrase a song? Boats assemble at the mouth of the harbor, mouth in earth. You who wrote an ode to silence never wrote of what is silenced. I did seek all resounding caves. Let the voice be lit. All the lanterns in the new world, we need the language of stone. From string to string quiver in the opening of the garden, so beautiful, Lucifer, dark sun of morning. There is no Eden but innocence, and no expulsion but after. Music spent my breath to achieve or invent death, each chord or cadence out of reach, out of tune. The last time in this town I promised vow or vowel to turn my back forever on chaos and give myself instead to music organizing itself in my ear from chaos, a river made rather than music that makes a shape of endless seconds. I devoted myself to the equation of numbers, and between each sound a formula that matches planets and atoms. Music is not an art, but a science. I could have remained alive, but I broke. No more will I listen to other than a single note moaned, not known. I do not here think again what place presents here a body as a battery of the one moment to open your mouth to plug in. I will allow what I invented to find its shape, to find its color, to make a space with which neither water nor sky do. How do you now in this contained shape go through your life, not as a constellation, not guessed at or intuited or divined, no name really, so why would you discern a shape for what is often called God? Sheila Chandra. No, we're going to skip that one. Or maybe we won't. Sheila Chandra sings without words because a word is a form of rage at death. The implicit formlessness of the body, which translates as the soul, does not cohere. Every feeling of a mortal body means separately French mot, meaning word, and mort, meaning death. What do we know and can't tell of the deep black of the world, of death, of the painting on the wall by Anish Kapoor, painted with a black so black you can't discern it? I in past days trusted border zones, relinquished homes, sounds let the nothing storm in. What was that painting on the wall? Was it a sculpture or a recess? That's a color called Vanta Black. It's so dark you can't see it. And it's leased for exclusive use by the artist Anish Kapoor, controversially. Vanta Black was made for missiles or planes, for defense purposes so dark no eye could see it. Some voices are like that too. No one could hear them. It is not good to be lost. To be lost is more than metaphor for spiritual condition. I sit at the terrace overlooking the green sea. Perhaps it is failure that ought to be sought. The voice that fails falls silent. Sheila's or the body's. The blue failed me. The sun fails every evening. I, we, you have all failed too. Every one of us who strove all these long years for peace failed. Okay, so are you guys, is anyone a hiker? Are people hikers here? You go hiking sometimes? Okay. Just wanted to throw that out there because there's realities that we understand about hiking that if you don't hike, you don't always. So I just wanted to just put that out there. Yesterday, at our 3rd mile into the Calangs, my stomach turned so quickly I had to run into the bushes and hardly had enough time to pull down my pants and squat before I shat myself empty. Then when we returned home, I showered, and Philippe came, and he adored my body all afternoon. He licked my skin. He buried his face in my armpits. He breathed in deeply. He held my feet to his lips and caressed and kissed them. And after we lay sweaty and talked about Duras and about this... It's true. About this hotel by the sea and how it is like the places in her novels. And I said, let me smell and lick your body too, because to shit and to fuck are the 2 main purposes of art. So that's the, anyhow, sorry if I shocked you. Public shitting and hookup sex in one single poem. Sheila Chandra has been rendered mute. The ambassador of sound, gray clouds comprise the day, auctioned off, siphoned off, betrayed by the failure of nerve endings and science. No cure for burning mouth syndrome. She, who sang in Uzbek, who contorted her tongue around words she never knew, learned even the language of the drum. Away from the melody, there is only harmony in the outer districts of the city of sound, ordinary spaces, empty bandstand, atonal landscape, sea's surface in the morning, before the day traffics its contours. In a world governed by storm and noise, why then should a singer not fall silent, though by great suffering her mouth, that orchestra, hall aflame, the drone, her most minuscule movement, still, do the sounds echo even now? Can I discern them? Anish Kapoor explores the space, sight disappears, rich, dark that opens, he makes shapes of them, invites you to understand or learn where the effort to understand fails. Agnes, Martin, her shapes of white, absence, both what, when the throat fails, sounds out. Does Sheila still listen to music? What does it sound like? I got to ask her that question. So I'm just going to read a couple poems to close the selection here, and thank you for listening. Calligraphy is a meeting point between abstract and particular. By certain combinations of visual marks to make symbols, Chandra lost her voice around the same time I found mine at midnight. We went in to swim in the sea, so we could be in the dark and not know the bottom. But the moon lit up the surface, so silver, so slammed. And then that boy, with the fear of failure, falling, architecture, voice, God, depths, death, he swam. And these are the last 2 poems in the sequence. Oh, in the house of Sheila Chandra, silent do not reign. Sheila Chandra's voice that swells of sun, I am one, what word that quells? The chords in the box, the mouth, the throat, third voice sought do not reign. In rain my hands, hand me the rain, will you sing? Can you swing your votes, vox, fox? In the house I learned scripture, stripter, in the roost, roused all the birds to the blue, the moon, sun, singer, singes, now the world sound, some echo, wind, echo, wing. Who can, born, then believe? Beleaguered, besieged, be seen, leagues from where you started, parted in league with my liege, legions of sound, sounder heard, then believed, darkest, black, and be unseen, a voice tracks back, for fawn, funded, fundament, firmly, this firmament founded, this fund of sound born, when you are, I did not want to be found, how can you say that, how can you now know what foe, no, she sang out flow, she breathed, be real, Eve, and lo. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Kazim Ali, please. Thank you, Kazim. Our next reader is Jos Charles. Jos is the year of a year and other poems. Fields and the Pulitzer finalist and winner of the 2017 National Poetry Series selected by Fedi Judah, and Safe Space. She is the founding editor of Them, the first trans literary journal in the U.S., and engages in direct gender justice work with a variety of organizations and performers. Charles' poetry has appeared in Poetry, Penn, Washington Square Review, Bloom, Denver Quarterly, Action Yes, The Feminist Wire, The Capilano Review, and elsewhere. Among her awards are the Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation and 2015 Monique Wittig Writers Scholarship. Please, everyone, welcome Jos Charles.
Thank you, Kazim. That was great. And thank you to all of you for being here. You're kind of a sparkly glow. And thank you to Beyond Baroque. It's great to be reading here for this. You know, growing up in Southern California, and I didn't think poetry was a thing people did. I was just a little scrappy Santa Ana kid, you know. I didn't know that was a career choice, let alone like a vocational one. Or say that the other way around. And and this place, when I first came here, it was shocking to me. Like, oh, you can have a thing dedicated to this thing. And that blew my mind. So I'm grateful for this place. Plus, I've had 2 disastrous Tinder dates here, so that's cool too. They weren't disastrous. I mean, okay. I'm going to read some from a year. I was going to read kind of across it and try and follow a sort of arc, but then I saw my good friend Sheila, who's here, and who has done a lot of great organizational work in Long Beach, #Serene Sunday. So now I got Long Beach on the brain, so I just want to read you Long Beach poems. And somewhere during the year I moved, the titular year, I moved from Arizona to Long Beach, so I'm going to skip the Arizona stuff. Too hot anyways. You know what? No, I'll read one poem, because there was one poem that I was thinking about my best friend who lived out here, and I was feeling lonely, and so maybe this can be the transition into it. The year was 2016, and I just kept writing poems about that year. Sort of organized by month, and as I sat with them, I kept returning to them for, 4 or 5 years or something, and I kept wanting them to be smaller, like less on the page. There couldn't be less on the page for me. I wanted them to barely be there, as poems. So I got there eventually, removed enough. So they're just short little notes in the air. You touch, long, irretrievable, beside you, again, me, again, in the dark of our certainty, I hold like a stone, and even you, I turn my head to 1,000 possible things gone. It is all I hold now, and spring. Songs. They're songs, really. It only occurs to me now. Okay, and this stuff is going to be from July. I'm probably going to drop reading the month titles and just let it flow. You all know the months anyways. You don't need me. You get it. You know what comes after July. Yeah. Yeah. It's all made up, right? Yeah. Gregorian. Who needs it? Slept in cars, sheave of hair shook in rain. California afire, my mind entirely a house of cinder in a house of cinder. Iterable rose, months massed in the anywhere. Shoulder me there. Yeah, and California was on fire, right? And I in 2016, as it's always kind of on fire, but, you know, anew. And Arizona was on fire, and something about that, too. Apocalypse. My American apocalypse. Okay. I'll talk about this poem after I read it. A scandal, 3 cartons read in a hedge, in each the 1,000-eye research of flies. I was walking down Long Beach, in Long Beach, and I was walking to work. I was working at this 99-cent store at the time, and, you know, working long hours. That's another reason why they're so short, right? If we heard of lunch poems, little O'Hara lunch, these are lunch break poems, right? So, like, no one, when you're writing poems on your lunch break, you just don't have time to write long poems, right? Oh, well. And I was walking to work, and I saw 3 Pizza Hut boxes, you know, thrown in a hedge. I was like, oh, no, Jos, you're going to open them, aren't you? Do you ever feel, yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to open it, and I opened it, and all the flies, classic Long Beach flies, you know, just all flew in my face. And I went, oh, that's a good poem, you know, let's write that one down. Okay, and this poem, let's see. I was applying for jobs, and you know, Long Beach, like LA, is very optic oriented. Yeah, so like there was this coffee shop I was applying for, and they had this trans flag and this pride flag, and I was like, oh great, they're gonna love me. Yeah, and so I was like, I'll apply there, you know. And I got in, and this woman who was conducting the interview was like, oh yeah, come back like an hour later. And I was like, okay, sure. So I came back an hour later, and she's like, oh yeah, cool. Can you come back an hour later? And I was like, yeah, sure. So then I came back an hour later, and she's like, can you wait here for a while? I was like, all right, sure. And then I waited for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half. And I'm noticing these other people come in that she's interviewing, you know, who are handing their resume and everything. And then I'm seeing her go and talk with someone about me outside and like point and laugh and then like come back in. And it took me a while, because I'm slow. It takes me a while to realize, like, oh, trans misogyny, oh, you know. So anyways, this was, then I was like, oh, that's a poem, you know, so. Oh, yeah, and then when I went, I said, can I have the key to the bathroom? Because, you know, I need a bathroom to cry in at a moment like that. They gave me the men's key, which was cool, too. I would take that if they gave me the job, right? Like, that's the funny thing, right? Like, at least pay me. Okay. Flags ask out. Pride whines from the terrace. Interview at 6. Interview at 8. A woman waiting unholds your form. A man's bathroom. I'm always in empty summer homes by the sea. Yeah, this is also, you know, Long Beach, well, whatever. Whenever you see empty apartments and empty houses, one just thinks, I don't know. people could be living there. Okay. I always liked, what is that guy called? Asterion. I can only remember his proper name. The Minotaur. That's right. Feels like a rude name to call someone the Minotaur, but because he had a name, it's Asterion. This is my Minotaur poem. I'll be rude. And I also referenced the song Closing Time, which I don't think I made obvious enough because it's funny to me. Closing time, foolish, plays above a butcher's block. It is not easy. Black line on a street from a flag of blue and black. I have accepted walking past the too lit district to get to you. Under the logic of cloud, the logic of a window shade. I live on where the mulberry bleeds, where they bury, I have accepted this, cisterns underground. If a door does not suffice, they build corridors, lower, it is not easy, you, Asterion. I'll read the whole of September, I think. This was an anniversary of a friend's passing that month. You know when someone passes and then you get stuck in your head and then you start seeing them everywhere, you know? A house under construction, faded fence, a pear rot in sun. Who knew? Measurement, a parliament of lamps where a light dims, a window left open enough for you to appear. It is not enough. One wind on a microphone, outline of a figure of a bruise. Remembered September or November, any month the same, really, like working the street, a bar, free drinks from creeps at the bar, together, a laugh lodged in air, taste of blood, copper, rain. This existence, sister, a theft. The Friday you left, the rain picking up, hasn't been the same. With grace, I am with you in your labor until the last. And I am joyful today for its structure. Machinery clips the maker's hand. Impossible, the leaves have changed. You know, sometimes I think, for me, what I like about poems is it's a space to pull together like diverse sensations and put them together into one object. Because, you know, sometimes like a sight and a sound and a taste and a feeling and a dream you had and everything come together into a hard knot. And I want to just hand that knot, as unwieldy as it is, you know, over and say, this was useful for me to feel. Maybe it's useful for another. And this one was really easy. I was looking at Catalina and I had a bad dream with bad people in it. That's it. That's a poem, baby. October rose up, a coastline obstructing itself. I lost something in every room they got in. How, your dreams. There's this place in Long Beach. Was called Harvey Milk Plaza, but it's since been termed Equality Plaza, I think. Yeah, I'm looking to Sheila. Is that right? Yeah. It was like a little, I don't know what to call it. It had some nice benches, and it had some lemon trees, and there are some people who are unhoused who would reside there, and you always say hi and very nice and whatever. And then one day the city decided it was going to renovate it, which I guess we know what that means. All these big scaffolding came up, and the whole thing got cleared out. And then, one doesn't have much hope, but, I was curious to see what it would look like. And then when it was revealed, it's like a big flat sheet of concrete with some rainbow colors, and then a quality plaza. And anyways, that's a poem, right? And so I wrote this. Perpetual hair falls to the floor. Harpies make a nest there. No book whose margin isn't illumined with carmine, carbon, gold. When you get back, they will say, we tore down a house and built a statue of a house. Thanks, Sheila. Also, Sheila just turned 60, and I think that deserves applause. Okay, I'll just read December. I think that seems like a good way to... No, I don't know why I'm talking out loud. I should figure this out and then talk. Okay. This is another Santa Ana Winds, Mountains on Fire poem. It is falling ash in Santa Ana, falling in your year, irrecoverably in the evening, holding hands ourselves into the evening, we wept a quiet English the day contained. Such silence, sudden now in the clearing. A tarp chains the lot of our speech. Sunday, no women washing at the washing stones. The past is only the only mutable thing. A lone tanker in the waves swims. That was a staring out into the water on PCH poem. So then I have these other poems at the end, which came about because COVID, I guess. Yeah, and I felt like this year that I had this kind of alienation or something about it, this kind of quietude that I wasn't sure I wanted other people to see. It kind of felt maybe for me. But then with 2020, I felt, well, maybe that alienation is coming to a close for me, insofar as it's become a little more universal. I don't know. That was the feeling in my heart anyways. So then I wrote these other poems to sort of slap on the end because I didn't want to mess with the integrity of the sort of year conceit. And so these are kind of poems I wrote looking back and thinking about sort of from 2020 back to then. And I'll just read one from here. I'll just read one. And this was also a walking around in Long Beach poem, and I saw a little bird in a little hedge, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I saw a little fruit carton holding a door open. I thought, oh, that's beautiful. And I was thinking about the relationship I had with my friend who passed, and this sort of leading, a way that someone can lead still. It's called A Song. And this will be my last one. Thank you to everyone. A song. Putting my finger through the hole the finch climbed through, a man, the very hose in his hand, a fruit carton props the door. There is no question of before, only pathless when you walk before, or I walk before, meadow-like, God shadow, what we show of it. Thank you.
applause for Jos Charles, please. Thank you, Jos. And our final reader for the evening is Mai Der Vang. Mai Der is the author of Yellow Rain, winner of a 2022 American Book Award, and Afterland, winner of the first book award of the Academy of American Poets. The recipient of a Lannan Literary Fellowship, her poetry has appeared in Tin House, the American Poetry Review, and Poetry, among other journals and anthologies. She teaches in the MFA program in creative writing at Fresno State. I think Yellow Rain was also a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, too, which isn't even on here. But please welcome everyone, Mai Der Vang.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Wow. What a great readings from both Kazim and Jos. It's an incredible honor for me to be reading alongside both of you, whose work I admire and have been a huge fan of. So thanks for that. And thanks to the folks at Beyond Baroque for inviting me to be here tonight, and to all of you also for coming out. So yeah, we'll get started here. I can see what you're saying about everyone looking sparkly, right? It does, yeah. So I'm going to start with a poem from my first book. This is a poem I wrote for my parents. I'm a daughter of Hmong refugees, and they resettled in this country in the very early 80s, just after the U.S. withdrew from its war in Vietnam. And so this is a poem I wrote for them. Dear Exile, never step back, never a last scent of plumeria. When my parents left, you knew it was for good. It's a herd of horses never to reclaim their steps. You became a moth hanging down from the sun. Old river calling to my mother kept spilling out of her lungs. Ridgeline vista closed into the locket of their gaze. It's the Siberian crane forbidden to fly back after winter. You marbled my father's face, floated him as stone over the sea. Further, every minute, emptying his child years to the land. You crawled back in your bomb. It's when the banyan must leave, relearn to cathedral its roots. All right, so I'm going to switch over to Yellow Rain, which is my the second book that came out. And the book is a collection of documentary poems that attempt to reinvestigate the issue of yellow rain itself. And yellow rain was a chemical biological weapon that was used against Hmong refugees as they were fleeing from the jungles of Laos following the U.S.'s withdrawal from its war in Vietnam and its proxy war in Laos. And what happened was that as the refugees arrived into the camps in Thailand, they reported that there was this mysterious substance that was being dropped from airplanes, and it would land on the vegetation, on their skin, on their clothing, and it made them sick. And they didn't know what it was, but they just knew that it was bad, and it was also fatal too in many instances. And so they got to the camps in Thailand, and they told the doctors there, and no one, again, knew what it was. But the United States was really, really eager to get to the bottom of whatever this substance was, which they ended up calling yellow rain. And they conducted what became a very confusing and tedious 8-year investigation into this mysterious substance. And what ended up happening was that when you had such an investigation like that, there were so many entities involved, from the State Department, the Department of Defense, the CIA, and even academic scientists were involved. The media got involved too, kind of got scandalous to a degree. So what happened then is that when you had so many people involved in this investigation into this mysterious substance that was being reported by these refugees, everyone also brought their political interests too, and their own particular political agendas that they wanted to see fulfilled through Yellow Rain. And so as those agendas began to dominate the discourse of Yellow Rain, the Hmong testimonies and stories began to fade into the background and were eventually invalidated and discarded and dismissed. And so my book attempts to challenge and interrogate the dismissing of those allegations. Yeah, it's been quite the journey trying to get through this book, and going through declassified documents and archival materials to get to the point where I felt like I could write it. And I'll start by reading the first poem in the collection, which is a poem that kind of helps to guide the reader through what they're going to encounter in this collection. Guide for the Channeling. Toward a worn legacy of rain, I have been lost down every jungle path, adrift and senseless to split open a cascade of knowing. I have tried with all my limber to keen a credo of justice, shelter those who solace inside graves. I have been boiled in my bladed search, opening with questions of a deserted pain to end with a cemented breath shattered into silk. This is where I am taking you, into a discarded vista blowing forth a silent blaze. Here in sunk villages of the disregarded. Here where even the dirt of the land cannot muster against the threat of air. Biomedical, vegetation, munitions unfound, every footprint incarnate. Where highlands tangle their echoes to the ground, a place, no matter how remote, will always be too near and too much a reminder of an expired war. Refugees not called as people only to be called the outcome of an event. We are venturing into swell beyond swelling of paperwork and protocol, slips of memo and routing cable and classified meeting. Here's the talk. Biological weapon, yellow spots, apiary blame for decades to wane and cold-filed. Believe me as a torch of this wandering that I have been digging within the origins of redaction. Believe where I am sending you. I have been shoveling upside down, and now my eyes stagger, my hands ache, my legs becoming hunter, my back a raging shadow. I have been gardening myself into this remembrance. So one of the key components of the investigation was that a lot of the refugees gave up, blood samples, urine samples, clothing samples, and they also went and picked the leaves too that had the samples on them, or had the substance on them. And the idea was that they would give these over to the embassy, and then the embassy would send them all over the world to laboratories to test whatever this thing was, if they could even figure out whatever it was. And what ended up happening was that in the process of shipping and sending all these samples of like these bodily fluids of these refugees, by the time they got to the laboratories, they had already degraded. And it was just futile, altogether impossible then to identify whatever this was. And it created so much confusion and mistrust and anxiety. And so this next poem is a poem that examines that process. Authorization to depart ravaged homeland as biomedical sample. Flew you afar, piecemealed bits of spleen, liver, tissues of the second gut orphaned by the whole. Routed you in a vacutainer. Bangkok, Frankfurt delayed, Dulles, Fort Detrick, as if only born to serve in post-mortem. Detain offerings of cerebral shards to be juried under a lens. Flew you from the silken wilderness of your viscera, from all the vacated leftovers of yourself, sinews snipped, culled from the ribs. In this mission of guilt for your unleaving, you've trekked far from the village. Salvaged insides from you and other hundreds, sealed on letterhead, dispersed to the globe. Here at long last, in these United States, you did not land a body only as a vial of blood. Were you registered as urine? Did they label you asylum? Sample M3582, victim 7, en route to London. Fluids of you granted fare to enter refugee airspace while ending away in hospital camps, stayed behind the sourced you and every else part. Sample M25, victim 9, no weekend courier, ambiguously arriving, so stomach of laments, how could they not get you here somehow? Only drops relayed lab to lab to lab. Cargo of you quaking inside an ice chest. Okay, so I'm going to do a few more poems. How y'all holding up? Yeah? It is, yeah. Tell me about it. Okay, so, when you have something like this happening and you have a large government body, overseeing this small tribal group of refugees, there's bound to be sort of bureaucratic mishaps. And so this next poem looks at the issue around funding and not being able to sort of get the funding that was needed to even get the testing done, to even figure out what was going on here. And I should also say that before the United States, as they were sort of conducting this investigation, they had also pinpointed their blame towards the Soviet Union, right? This was all happening during the Cold War. And so they were convinced that it was the Soviets who had given this to the communists to then use against the refugees. And that was also why they were so eager to get to the bottom of this, so that they could then make the claim to shore up their weapons and arsenal in defense against what the Soviets were doing to them, right? So this is a poem looking at the issue around budgetary needs and funding. It also starts with an epigraph from one of the declassified documents that I pulled. Disfigures. The delay in funding is having a serious negative effect on the team's substantive work. Over the past 5 months, the team has been functioning by bleeding other mission elements for transportation, vehicles, and secretarial support. At present, we do not have even the funds or fiscal authority to purchase the sodium fluoride required to preserve human blood samples, thus hampering the team's efforts at a time when we should be most alert to collection possibilities. A cable from the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok to the Secretary of State, March 2nd, 1984. It's about the money. It's not about the money. It's about politics. It's not about the politics. It's about budget restraints. It's not about budget restraints. It's about proving yellow rain. It's about disproving yellow rain. It's about men and their need for more arms. It's about men and their need to repurpose arms. It's about men and their need for power. It's about controlling access to power. It's about concocting the reason to shore up. It's about dismantling the reason to shore up. It's about leveraging the Hmong story of yellow rain. It's about rejecting the Hmong story of yellow rain as lies. It's about routing blood samples in a timely manner. It's about misrouting, delays, and loss of sample integrity. It's about taking down the Soviets. It's about defending the Soviets. It's about violating treaties. It's about ignoring violations. It's about how to grade compliance of treaties. It's about the facade of compliance. More than prototyping means of sabotage, experimentation of new concealments, it's about the footprint of bees, collectors of a pearled stock, unable to send their wings into bloom. It's about a face no longer to wake, a disheveled neck staring through the satin of its own shadow. It's about a shroud of guilt, theaters of espionage to sour and scandalize cider of the sun. It's about the money, the currency of a body, the body as a form of currency. It's about buildup, a collection of stiff bodies in a cemetery of debt. Okay, so I should, as I was saying earlier, one of the key things that really impacted the investigation was the political interest and agendas of all of the differing people. Those who said that that this substance was a chemical weapon, they had their own political agenda to fulfill. And those, obviously, who said that it wasn't a chemical weapon, they too had their own political agenda to fulfill through this, right? So it was really depending on what side you were on. And one of the theories that came out of this from the side over here was that this substance was just the feces of honeybees defecating on those refugees as they ran through the jungles. And that is the theory that stands today. Is this bee feces theory? Yes. And so this next poem is sort of a poem in defense of the bees, right? I mean, we've got to defend the bees. They're, right? And it starts with a letter to the editor, actually from someone who lived in Long Beach. Yeah. Allied with the bees. These people have been living in these areas for all their life, but they have never heard or experienced something like this before. Bees and honey are part of their life. They and their ancestors have traded honey for salt, clothes, and other goods for hundreds of years. A letter to the editor by S. Yang, Long Beach, April 6, 1984. Tell them, child, we have hiked these hills without shoes long enough to hunt alongside the bees, memorizing the bend, pulse of their voices when they go dream inside the trees. We have been crowned with syrup of their toils so that our syntax might awaken to know its full range, compassed to the north, pristine as a nomadic butterfly. Tell them, daughter, we watched as they buried their queen, folding her into cashmere of her wings before swarming the body toward a fire of stars. And for days, the forest keened a shadow lullaby. And for nights, we listened for the bees, only to uncover the hurried hush of our own stranded feet, falling forgotten as collateral beings. Tell them, Mintai, we are not misled in our anguish. What happened to the bees also happened to us. All right, my last poem here. Thanks all for listening and for being here. Vigil for the Missing. On my most nocturnal days, the icebergs stop listening to me. They shift their sails away from my breathing. They tell me I am not made of mirrors, but from a wolf that slept in a grave and gave birth to a sunrise. She is the fruit that formed me, the dense coat of silk shadowing me out of the ice. Sometimes I dream in the voice of another empire, and I see its feet slink through the crosshairs, clipping around shells and splinters of trapped fires. Its ballroom caves ripple out murmurings of the lost ones, despair modeling the dark as small searchlights. Lost ones who linger through a solar rage, I know your pain lives cardinal. Love spills from your hallucinations. Once, a child whispered into me, such sorrow can only be followed by a decade of snow. I crawled into the sky and wept a puddle of sweet laurel until I bled at the ankles, until grandmother called, "Come in from the winter." Thank you so much.
Another round of applause for Mai Der Vang and also for Kazim and Jos as well. Thank you all so much for your reading. Thank you all for coming. I have a few more things to offer you. One is books for sale in the bookstore. I'm sure our authors would be happy to sign, although I'm not sure if I've even asked you that, but I hope so. We also have a little bit of a after party, if you will, in the back patio. We have drinks, a few snacks. Feel free to hang out. And then also we have a whole other day of a festival tomorrow. If you don't want to come for the poets, we also serve as a space for disastrous Tinder dates. So, come on back. Thank you so much.